And we're live. So yeah, this is the NFL draft recap with Mary Lee and Scott from the MG and Professor Show. Our special guest Matt Parino from I think it's like Syracuse.com is going to join us in about 23 minutes. So theoretically, we'll see how well that goes. I told him he can come in audio or video, however he wants to come in.
Yeah, looking forward to getting his take on everything that happened this past weekend.
So yeah, your Eagles had an interesting draft. It looks like.
They did indeed. They were talk of the town apparently. Little draft moment caught on camera that not all parties knew was going to be on camera.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. You took who did you take first round again? Oh yeah, you took. There you go.
Devonta Smith.
Yeah, you took you stuck to Alabama well a little bit. I mean,
Honestly, the main thing that kind of came to me looking at the draft, looking, afterwards, kind of because I didn't know who a bunch of these prospects are. Like I'm not gonna pretend like I did, like most fans who act like, oh, a pick is so bad. It's like you didn't watch this guy play a single down in college football. Don't try to tell me that you know any better than these, NFL.com and all these people that are giving draft grades who do it for a living. They literally get paid to watch college football so they can make these determinations. So, I'm going off of what all these people say. Of course, their insight is much more valuable than mine. But one of the things that I did find interesting specifically after the first few picks, was that the Eagles took a specific direction to get players to build around Jalen Hurts. You bring in the guy who he knew from college, knows Devonta Smith. They work together. Of course, you're giving him just a weapon in general. Eagles wide receivers over the past couple of years have been, real hit or miss, as far as guys who were supposed to produce, who didn't. Injuries came into play, just various different things kind of played there. And, there's still the belief is still pretty strong that Zach Ertz is going to be traded, released, gone from the team. So to bring in a guy like Devonta Smith to be Jalen Hurts' number one, I think was really smart. Then you bring in a guy who is going to, if healthy, probably one of the best interior guards. He can play any of the positions on the line. The expectation is that he's going to, be the future center. Jason Kelce is probably going to be his last year. He's probably going to retire. So kind of bringing in his replacement, getting somebody who is trustworthy back there, who can snap Jalen the ball and, protect him too, because again, with injuries, the Eagles have not always done so well with keeping their quarterback off the ground. So it did seem to me like they made the decision to put everything behind Jalen Hurts. And I think that was the only decision they could make, because after everything that happened in the offseason, and how things went down with Carson Wentz, and, ultimately leading to his exodus to Indianapolis, you chose Jalen Hurts as your guy. So if they had gone into this draft and done anything that would have, undermined that in any way, it would have made the Carson Wentz debacle that much worse. So at least in this regard, it's like, okay, maybe you messed up. Maybe, Carson Wentz is going to have the better career than Jalen Hurts. Who knows? But at least you've made the decision now that you're going to stick with this guy that you pretty much put everything on the line for. Like he is, I have to imagine Howard Roseman's job security is tied to Jalen Hurts. That the Jalen Hurts experiment doesn't work out, maybe that's finally the, straw that breaks the camel's back for Jeffrey Lurie to make a decision there. But I mean, overall, I'm seeing positive draft grades from NFL.com and CBS and, all of these other organizations that offer the draft grades anywhere in the range of like a B plus to a solid A. So, I mean, without knowing anything, being able to provide any additional insight other than what these experts are providing would be superfluous on my part. So I'm just going to hope that those draft grades are good, are solid, that we're bringing in guys who are going to help the team and, first and foremost, stay on the field. So that's definitely the biggest concern with the second round pick, but hopefully it all works out.
yeah, Mike, me crossing. I don't know if you saw me. I crossed my fingers when you mentioned the health of your second round pick. He's probably the best interior lineman that's been graded in a pretty decent time. But the only downside is he's had both of his ACLs replaced. So
Yeah,
that
it's
kind
pretty
of
big now.
yeah, that kind of kills your lateral mobility too. Just saying from had a couple of knee injuries myself. And but like he's
Someone
really
did, one of the draft analysts did make a good point though. They said the hesitance to draft, if he had been a wide receiver or running back or something like that, who had had both of his ACLs replaced, like there would have been a bigger hesitancy there to
oh
draft.
absolutely.
Yes, mobility is important when you're on
I
the
would,
line, but it's
but
significantly less important than at a skill position.
well, especially if he's a center, like because you don't really move.
Right.
If you're unless you're pulling out and blocking, that's the only time you're
Yeah.
really
There's not much that he's going to have to do. So hopefully it works out.
yeah. I mean, you had Jason Beers and for like forever and a day, and he's just I mean, he was so talented, but he got I mean, as he was also a former Bill, I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but like he was just so talented, but he would get hurt a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And the age is, finally caught up to him too. So I don't
Yeah, I
know what
mean,
he thinks he can or can't do still, but he certainly can't do a lot of what he used to be able to do.
yeah, you can't do much at 38 playing interior line.
Yeah, not quite.
You're not. I mean, Bruce Matthews did it. Like it's Clay's uncle and the other Matthews that's played for Atlanta. I can't play it. I'm blanking on his name, but like it's his dad. And yeah, he played till he was 40, and like it's just unthinkable. He played all five positions.
Definitely more like exception to the rule in
Yes.
those cases than, you're not going to see that many guys who are able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I love I don't hate Flea's pick. Like, as much as I love draft grades, I don't like. I agree with for who is I think it's like his YouTube's like that's good sports. That every draft grade's actually a B, just because literally no one's played yet.
Right.
So you can't go like unless it's a really hideously awful pick like we have seen before. Like what are you doing taking them that early or like
Well,
whatever.
and
I mean,
that's the whole thing too. And I was having this conversation with somebody and basically said that like draft grades are all fun and good. It's nice to be
they
able
get
to
cyclics.
that your team did well according to the metrics of whatever the site that you're following the draft grade on. Like that's just kind of a nice thing to hold on to. But nothing matters until these guys get on the field. And that's why I think so many have started to redraft basically after 5 years. So like, okay, now that we've actually
Where are
seen
they?
now that we've seen what these guys have done, this is the order that they would have or should have been taken in based on what we know now. So
But
obviously hindsight is 2020.
I
Anybody 5 years from now can say
I
I knew that this guy was this guy who was drafted in the fourth round like was going to turn out to be this great, like the whole Russell Wilson thing. Like hindsight's 2020. Not everybody's going to say like, oh, I knew Russell Wilson was going to turn out to be the best quarterback of that draft. So there's certain things that you pick up on, but at the same time, I'm always very hesitant to make any
I don't.
determinations this early on, just because there's so much unknown.
I agree 5 years is a good metric, but I honestly I can't redraft because in like 9 times out of 10 every year you have like quarterback like the
Yeah.
top three picks because oh yeah we got a quarterback in the fifth round, the sixth round. We got Tom Brady. Okay, he's now the first overall pick. Okay, then the next guy is like okay, this next quarterback will be second overall because every team that's picking early usually needs a quarterback.
Right.
I'll just regrade. Or like you say, they update the grade. So like if like for example, we'll just use like Jalen Hurts for an example. Like if he's still the quarterback of the Eagles in 3 years, and he's playing like even if it's like average football, his grade will go up. They'll give him like a B plus or maybe an A minus, just because he's still the quarterback. I'm not gonna go.
Yeah, there's definitely kind of grading people in a vacuum, which is what these early draft grades are, because you're grading based off of either what that team needed or where the talent remained on the board, but everybody has different draft strategies. People approach the draft in different ways. You might not be looking best available. You might be looking at positions of need. So, is one writer going to say because you didn't go best available because you left talent on the board for, a divisional rival to take, for example, then that's not you doing a good job in the draft. Everybody has their own way of viewing things.
But
yeah, I definitely agree not to put too much stock into it.
Yeah, because it's like okay, yeah, like for example, you guys trading up with Dallas, which I still am baffled by. That you guys are changing those numbers.
Did you see the video of the angry Giants fan?
Yes. Did you watch you should watch the video of like the it's urinary tree, like the guy I showed you before, and him, like it's like the like it's like where all optimism dies. It's like all the guys that watch it together, and they're like all fans, and they're like a Broncos fan, like that's good sports. Him being a Steelers fan, 5 points vids, that's a diehard Giants fan. It's like every pick that year, like that on Thursday, that's Thursday. Like
Yeah.
everyone's like anyone but him, and all of a sudden they take him, or like a Dallas, they show the Dallas Cowboy fan that's like walked off because like he's like, please anyone but Surtain to Denver, and then all of a sudden they announce Pat Surtain,
Yeah.
and like that's good sports as a diehard Broncos fan, and he's like, I love the Surtain pick, I do, but with Justin Fields still on the board, why didn't you take him?
Mm.
Or like I said, like Utree is like a diehard like Steelers fan.
Yeah.
He loves the pick, but like who's gonna block? You have apparently no heir apparent to quarterback other than Dwayne Haskins.
And that's the thing is that, again, different teams are going to approach the draft differently. I kind of look at what the Eagles did last year versus what they did this year. It took an entirely different approach between what they were looking to accomplish, and it's different fans. Like the way that fans look at drafts is, we didn't have, I'll just use the Eagles as an example. We didn't have a good wide receiver. So for us to pick a wide receiver first, that's what everybody wanted. Was it the guy that people wanted? Not necessarily, but did trading down really matter, given that Pitts and I forget the Pitts and Waddle were off the board? No, because they were your best options. Had we traded down and one of them had fallen to 6, then you're probably going to see a different reaction from the fans as far as what we could have had. But we got the wide receiver. We got the guy who most people expected that we were going to get, back when these early mock drafts were coming out. So, fans are, of course, going to feel one way about that. But fans always look at things like, what are the team needs? What did the team not have? So a bunch of people, when the Eagles go and take, Landon Dickerson, they're like, well, we need a defense. We need help on the defensive line. We need help in the secondary. Why didn't we take this person? Why didn't we take that person? So you're not looking at it in terms of where the talent is on the board, or even to break it down as far as the Eagles have 3 first-round picks next year. That is pretty crazy.
Would you get the other? I know you got the one from whoever's worse between which one was quote better between Miami and Sanford. Where'd you get the other one from? I forgot.
I'm honestly not sure, but they had said it during the draft that we have 3 picks next year. So I was like, okay, we got 3 picks next year. So unless somebody misquoted or, whatever the case.
I know you have at least 2. I know that. So I mean, I'm not arguing. I'll go. I'll agree to it.
But either way, 2 first-round picks. Not that often that a team has that in a draft. It's certainly, if we do have the 3, it's certainly very rare to have 3 picks. So you kind of have to look at that too and say, okay, maybe the Eagles, we're not going to be good this year. We're not going to be competitive. We're not planning on, short of a miracle happening, the Eagles are not going to be a good team. So the fact that we kind of skipped on defense, maybe the plan, maybe there is some thought in, hey, we have these picks next year. We're going to focus on rebuilding that defensive line. We're going to focus on this next year. So again, the way that fans kind of look at things, they see what they want to see, which is they want their team to be good. They want their team to start winning. So when a draft pick comes in that doesn't seem like it supports that, people are going to act the way that they're going to act. So that's part of the beauty of it is fans are allowed to feel how they want to feel, and they're allowed to show emotions, and they can be wrong, they can be right, they can be jumping to conclusions, they could be anointing somebody a new savior, whatever the case might be. Like, sports are about the fans, and how we respond to things is in our prerogative. So like, I don't fault people for wanting to make those judgments beforehand. I've just always been somebody who's like, let's wait and see. I like the idea of what was going on. I think the picks were good, but the team is not going to be good next year. You're not going to get a good gauge of the talent that came through the draft next year. You're going to have to wait a couple of years till the team's competitive to really see if the 2021 draft worked out in their favor.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, people are really criticizing the Bills for going 2 edge rushers. Well, it's like they're 2 back-to-back first rounds between Boogie Basham and Greg Rousseau. As you can tell, I'm wearing a Miami Hurricane shirt today just for it. But it's like, guys, they have 2 aging pass rushers. They're both on their contract year in Mario Addison and Jerry Hughes, and they're both in their mid-30s.
Mhm.
I think they're gonna be 34 soon. So it's like you can replace theoretically if they learn in a year. You can basically have like a redshirt year like they do in college football, where like, hey, your job is to learn this year. That's all it is. And if you play well this year, great. But like, yeah, it's just like a icing on the cake. So I don't know if you heard, but speaking of the Bills, like first two picks, apparently they're getting a mentor.
They're
So
hiring somebody?
no, they're hiring a person outside to train them,
Huh.
and it's a former Bills player. And when you think Bills pass rusher, who comes to mind?
Oh gosh. The name is on the tip of my tongue.
It's the most generic name in sports, but it's also the guy that leads with the NFL in sacks all time. Mr. Bruce Smith is going to work with both of them.
You can't have a better person to work with.
Yeah, especially when you got a person that's like, especially if theoretically like Rousseau is playing out of position. Like, I mean, Bruce Smith played out of position for 15 years in Buffalo. Like, he was an undersized defensive end who just killed quarterbacks for a living. I mean, literally, legitimately killed quarterbacks. I mean,
Whatever
and
works, you know. I
yeah,
think it's a great idea to bring somebody in to mentor, these rookies, because there's so much that players don't know when they come into the NFL. College doesn't prepare you for the NFL, and it's not just on the field stuff. It's great that they have somebody who can show them the ropes of that position on the field. But at the same time, it's great to have somebody who lived the life, who was an NFL player for a long time, who could tell them, you're going to go through ups and downs. There's going to be times when things aren't going your way. And, you have to figure out mentally how to approach that and how to handle that. There's so many elements to being a professional athlete that college doesn't prepare you for, that I feel like these teams, they have to do a better job of almost like an onboarding process of getting guys into, it's not just the NFL, it's the NBA, it's the MLB, it's all these major sports where you're going to learn some of it on the job, sure, but to have somebody who lived it, I think all teams could use something like that,
I'm
just kind of
I'm bet for more
give
teams.
them a chance to succeed, and give them
Uh,
a chance to not be stupid and make stupid decisions, and
I,
all of that kind of stuff that derails careers faster than it should.
like I said, I'm surprised more teams don't do it.
I'm surprised too.
Yeah, because
But
it's
maybe
like,
maybe it's a trend. Maybe something's going to start. Maybe people will start
I mean,
taking note of
I
how
mean,
beneficial something like this could be, and they'll opt to follow suit.
like yeah, it's like for like you can't like it's amazing how some teams seemingly can't develop a player. I mean, and I'm not bashing any team specifically right here. I'm just being like, for one
Yeah.
reason or another, it's like I don't know if their training facilities are up to par or not. I mean, this stuff like it's just like I don't know if you saw the pictures. I don't think I've sent you any of like of the pictures like Greg Russo meeting like Brandon Bean and like Sean
No.
McDermott, and he's just like he looks like Gulliver. And like in some of the camera angles because he's a legit. I mean, remember he's a legit 6'7". He's
Yeah,
270.
he's tall.
Yeah, and like I mean the camera angle they put it and it's totally camera angles, but he looks like legitimately like 7.5 foot tall.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so it's just like I get it. That's probably just to intimidate the rest of the league. I mean, theoretically, is this like? I mean, is it a great pick for those two? I don't know. Like I said, I like them because it might be hey, Operation Kill Tua, Zach, and just kill the rookie young quarterbacks. Because theoretically, Josh Allen might be the most senior quarterback in the AFC East
Yeah. Yeah.
at 24 years old.
I mean, him and Lamar are the. Well,
AFC
no,
East, not AFC.
but I'm trying to think like just around the league,
Yeah,
like him, Lamar, Baker, they're all
Mahomes.
pretty young. Yeah, Mahomes, and
Yeah,
I'm trying to think who would
it was.
be.
It was like the
I guess
playoffs last.
Cam. I guess
Well,
if Cam plays, he would be the most
yeah.
senior for that division in
I mean, it was
particular. Like
it
Ben
was just
Roethlisberger
crazy.
is obviously the most senior in the North.
It was just crazy to think like watching the AFC and NFC the Final Four, like the AFC Championship game, and the NFC Championship game, where you got like Drew, you got Peyton Manning, Peyton Manning. Wow.
Yeah, the NFC
Eric,
was like 100
yeah,
years old, and the AFC were all young kids, all
yeah,
year four, year
yeah.
three.
It was Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen in the AFC, and then it was like freaking Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady in the NFC. It's like these two guys have more experience than like Mahomes and Allen have been alive.
Yeah.
It was just I was like, oh my god, holy new guard versus old guard.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of what it's so interesting to see that develop. You know, the NFC, and you're going to start seeing a new guard in the NFC
I think
short,
so soon, like a couple
especially
years.
now that Drew Brees is retired. Who knows what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers? You know, if the Packers are going to call his bluff and fire the GM. If they do that, will that be enough, or is he going to end up having a Tom Brady esque? You know, I go play for a contender. I go win a Super Bowl somewhere else. Who knows what's going to happen there?
Yeah,
But I mean, you are kind of running out of those aging elite quarterbacks because they are in their late 30s and early 40s and
or
even
mid
mid,
40s.
yeah, I was gonna say even mid 40s, you know, in the case of Mr. Tom. But it it's always nice to see that next crop come in. And
Oh, absolutely.
I think you're going to start seeing that more. It just always feels like in the AFC, there's always a worse team in the AFC than there is in the NFC. So, like, they're always getting that higher draft pick, they're always getting that quarterback. So, you know, like you have Jacksonville and you have the Jets this year grabbing 1, 2 as far as guys who are supposed to be these really good quarterbacks. So, it's like the NFC kind of doesn't get, I guess, the top quarterback. So maybe that's why they're a little bit behind on the whole who's going to develop first situation. I don't know, but we'll
Speaking
have
of
to see.
NFL, yeah, speaking of draft, we actually have our guest, Matt Parino. Matt, you there?
What is up, guys? How are you?
Good, and yourself? Thanks for joining us.
I'm great. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Figure I'd bug a friend to come on, like talk NFL draft recap. And no, there's like almost no one better that I trust.
Well, thank you. That is high praise.
Absolutely, man. So yeah, we're just talking draft in general, not just the Bills draft. I mean, so like any surprises for you this year? Like we're like what? we
I mean, now I guess like Mac Jones, we were all pretty much dialed into him at 3 to San Francisco. I still maintained as much as the San Francisco 49ers seemed to like him that I thought it was puzzling that they trade up to get him because I didn't hear a lot of that, you know, going into the draft, even as far back as they made the deal. So, you know, they ended up getting one of the top quarterbacks in the draft this year in Trey Lance, which, I mean, if you're them, you're probably sitting there saying, we got to come away with one of these guys that we believe in. And that's the cool thing about the process too. This was a weird year. So I guess from that perspective, it's probably good that it took them some time to figure it out because there wasn't a lot of information to deal with. I mean, there was no scouting combine. Everything changed a little bit. So I think that was probably the biggest surprise. I think we're going to look back, if you're asking like Bills related, what was probably the biggest surprise for me is that Gregory Rousseau was there at 30. I think a lot of teams are going to regret that. I think he's going to end up being, you know, if not the best, you know, maybe the second best or, you know, maybe the most impactful defensive end long term in this draft.
Yeah, I don't know if you see, I'm wearing my Miami
There you
Hurricanes
go.
colors. I've been a lifelong Canes fan despite going to UB as well. I don't know if you know that. But like I'm all about the U, and like I think I've like annoyed my co-host Mary Lee about it like a lot
Only once or twice.
in episode. But yeah, it was just like. And we did a live draft for the first round last year. We were just heard I was just talking with. I brought some guests on too, and it was like 5.5 hours. And
Wow.
yeah, just her and I just bantering back and forth. Like she knows some prospects, but not all of them. So I was clearing about most of them. And it was just
Very
like,
nice.
and we were doing like do the pick. Like we were trying to she was trying to get me to pick the pick as it was coming down, and the Bills were coming out. I have it down to two people, and Rousseau was one of them. I was like, I mean, he's still here. I'm like, take him. Like he just fell in our lap for like a hour and was happy as a pig in slop.
And I don't think there was, I think the idea was even within the Bills that I don't think that they thought he would be there. And so, you know, as I think that the board was materializing, you know, had he gone and ETN was off the board, I would have been interested to see if the Bills wouldn't have traded out of that spot just to kind of get more draft capital. Brandon Bean was able to do that in the fifth round, trading their second pick. But I think that was, they went into this draft, you know, probably wanting more picks in that middle range, 30 to, you know, 80 or 90, and it didn't materialize. But I think that they got really into not only Rousseau, but Basham, who I think, depending on who you talk to, that's another thing. I can't remember a draft class, and this is my third year on the beat, my third draft that I'm covering, so I'm still kind of a relative newbie. But I can't remember a draft class where there was especially the defensive end class, where there was so much like all over the board type of analysis on guys. Like depending on who you talk to, some people have Boogie Basham as like a middle first round grade. Some people you talk to have a third or fourth round grade on him. So
Yeah,
I don't think that there was a lot of consensus in this draft.
exploit. I don't think you could have consensus anywhere just because like you don't have like the physical reports. I mean, like for stuff that would come out like last second, like the JOK stuff where it came out, oh, he's had a undisclosed heart issue, and it comes out like 2 days before the draft and no one mentions it, and that's why he
Exactly.
falls.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, we gotta take JOK. It's like, but then I see this report like, oh, he's got a heart problem. No, I mean this screams like Gaines Adams 2.0.
Yeah, and with JOK, I almost feel like I'm wondering if the Bills did their due diligence and they still decide, and maybe at some point we'll get an answer on this from Bean. He generally doesn't like to talk about players that he didn't draft and like get too into the weeds with that because locker room material. They play for another team now, I guess. But I do wonder if Fit had a reason, played a role in why he fell too, because like the Browns, I think they had a first round grade on him too before the injuries, and they felt lucky to get him where they did. But I don't think that he fits perfectly in every scheme or on every defense. So, we'll see. I mean, if he ends up being like an impactful defensive weapon, I mean, teams are going to be really disappointed they passed on him.
Well, it's like, I mean, I would use the example of either Justin Simmons from like last year where he had no set position. And like usually, if you're a man without a position, usually you in college, usually you really don't have one in the pros. It's like people market it like certain players like, oh, he can play all 5 line positions, but does he play any of them good? Like the greatest example is like Cameron Irving from Florida State, where it's like he had a first round grade. The Browns used our first round pick that we gave him for the Sammy Watkins trade to take him, and he just was bad everywhere, seemingly. It's like you're the jack of all trades but master of none.
Seriously.
I mean, it's like I'm surprised he's with Carolina. I'm surprised he still is in the NFL. I mean, he must be decent and like, okay, you're playing a guard and that's it. We don't need you anywhere else.
Yeah, I think I don't know if he was he a swing tackle for Dallas last year? I was reading up I was reading up a little bit about him. He's definitely a depth piece. I'm not sure that he'll start there. Although Carolina's offensive line isn't great, so he'll probably be in the mix in terms of competition wise. But yeah, to your point, I also was talking to a few people down in Cleveland and about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and one name to remember, and I know he had more of a set position coming in, but Tyrann Mathieu, like I feel like what he does for a defense, he did it in Houston and then he did it and he's done it in Kansas City. You can just, if you're creative and you can, maybe put aside like traditional ideologies in terms of what you want to do in terms of your base defense, how much you're willing to switch it up. I think you can find a place for a really good player, no matter who that player is and how you want to utilize them. And I think like Steve Spagnuolo is that guy. Like, I think he really frustrated Brian Dable twice last year, and the Bills were the second best offense in the league. Arguably the best passing attack consistently.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Matthews is probably a great example. I mean, you got out of him, but like he lined up as linebacker sometimes despite his like lack of size. He's like a defensive weapon. And it's amazing to see. Like we've got offensive weapons. Why can't we have defensive weapons? I guess that's my question. So yeah, it's like, I mean, there's like I said, there wasn't surprises because it's like we said, there was no like in depth like, hey, this person's got this like medical like combines are a beautiful thing for like GMs, and like they barely had that, if at all. Like
you're right.
And like taking quarterback, I'm thankful like some teams like our like the Buffalo Bills not needing a quarterback urgently. It's like I don't know who I take because it's like. Does this person have medical? Does this person not? I mean, you're investing a top 5 draft pick in a quarterback that you can't thoroughly evaluate, or one-on-one even. That would scare the hell out of me. Mary, you got any questions? You can chime in anytime you want. Sorry for making this 1-2 with Matt
Yeah,
and
no,
Yeah,
no, no. It's
I
fine.
stopped talking because I didn't want to monopolize too much here.
I.
No, I'm curious. So, one of the things I feel like that always comes up after drafts is especially at the quarterback position. Once 5 years down the line, maybe even 10 years down the line, redrafting that position. Do you feel that it's going to, end up with Trevor Lawrence as the best NFL quarterback? Or do you think that we're kind of looking at a Russell Wilson scenario where, the best guy was found later on in the draft?
I wouldn't be surprised if Trevor Lawrence ends up not being the best from this class. I know it seems like this like slam dunk situation, but there was enough, I know Chris Sims is a polarizing figure on social media these days with his takes, but he played the position. He evaluates the quarterbacks, pretty well. I think that his take last year, I can't remember who it was on specifically. It might not have even been the quarterbacks, but he had one win last year. I respect him. I respect that, what he does. And he likes Zach Wilson more than Trevor Lawrence. I don't share that opinion. I'm actually, not super high on Zach Wilson. I think that this could be a situation where the Jets look back and regret this pick. Now we're sitting here. What are we, 3 years removed from Josh Allen, the Josh Allen experience. So I feel like it's never a good idea to get in the business of, hardline projecting quarterbacks because there's so many variables. Like Trevor Lawrence is walking into a really unstable situation from the perspective of Urban Meyer has never been the CEO of an NFL team. It's a different game. Like the great coaches have come to the NFL and failed and fallen on their faces and scurried back to college. I mean, Nick Saban's the greatest college coach of all time, and it didn't work. So they're putting a lot of eggs in that basket that he's going to come into the NFL, put together the right kind of staff, build around him. Now, I will say Lawrence has a lot of talent around him. They've done a good job in 2 years drafting, and they brought in some fun pieces. But I'm not sold on Lawrence being the guy. No doubt about it in this class.
Yeah, it's like you mentioned college quarterbacks. I mean, probably the best example. I mean, you can say Saban, but I wouldn't even use Saban because he actually had success in Cleveland as the defensive coordinator with Belichick. That's how deep how deep that Browns '90s team was, like in the early '90s before they moved. I would say the greatest example to me is like either Chip Kelly or Dennis Erickson. When Erickson went to Seattle and they had he tried to get every Hurricanes player he could just for familiarity, and it just blew up in his face. Then Chip Kelly
Yeah,
tried.
But I'd even take that though. I'd take somebody that had assistant or coordinator success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess you could make that argument with Saban. Although that stint in Miami was so bad that I don't even remember the Cleveland stuff. But to your point, Urban Meyer's never been in this world, and so
I think he's over his head.
Yeah.
I really do. It's I like that you got, like you said, they've done smart drafting. They give him weapons protection and everything, but the NFL is not the NCAA, especially if you've never been in this world. And you might get killed for it. What was if year one you go 1-16 and what do you do? Take another quarterback?
No, they're in on him.
Oh, yeah.
They're in on him for a long time until the wheels fall off.
It's like, okay, so you're gonna have to like I said, I don't know. It's just a baffling time. Let's see. You feel like anyone who do you think got the steal the first round besides if you think that Rousseau pans out and starts just killing everyone, for lack of better words?
That's a good question. I'm gonna have to bring it up here. You're throwing me off my game here. I'm coming on doing all these shows talking Bills.
I keep you on their toes.
What's funny is I didn't love the trade per se for the Jets because they gave up a lot to move up to get an interior offensive lineman. But if you take the trade part of it out and you just say, okay, the Jets land Vera Tucker at 14, I think that's a home run pick because he's got so much flexibility. You can move him anywhere on the inside. You can play them at either tackle spot, right tackle, most likely in New York with Mekhi Becton there. So I like that move. And they really did they went all in on their vision, which was fixing where they went wrong with Sam Darnold and actually legitimately building around Zach Wilson, whatever he
Yeah,
had. So he's already in a better position to be successful. I like that move. You're pairing the quarterback with, a top tier offensive lineman, albeit not a tackle, but getting Becton last year gave them that versatility to go in a different direction. So I think that some people had him as their number 2 guy on the board. I've even talked to some people that had Vera Tucker ahead of Penei Sewell because he sat out, as crazy as that might sound. So I like the pick for the Jets. I know Bills fans won't want to hear that.
yeah. It's like, I mean, they got their left. They could potentially have their blind side protected for the next decade. It's,
Right.
I mean, like I said, I love the team. I thought did really well. The guy, like the nice sleepers, the Chargers. I mean, getting the tackle they wanted apparently, unless they wanted to trade up to get Sewell, which I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, get your quarterback,
No,
so you can get his blindside tackle.
no, that's a great point. Slater at 13, not having to trade is
Huge.
that's a slam dunk, 100%. Some people had him. I feel like Sewell's got the higher ceiling, but Slater has the higher floor.
I
So
can
he's
agree
going
with
to come
that.
in probably a lot more. I don't want to say NFL ready because I don't have any doubts that Sewell will come in, go through the offseason program and be ready to go and probably be a force as well. But I think you like what you're getting out of the gates for a team that's ready to win now in the Chargers with Herbert already in place. That's a nice get. And I think they came back. Didn't the Chargers come back with a nice talent in the second round too? Santi Samuel Jr. So they addressed the
Yeah,
cornerback position too. So they
they
had a nice
addressed.
little draft.
Yeah, they addressed some nice needs. I mean, like, but like, yeah, I think the best news for Detroit getting Sewell at 7 is like one, they'd have to trade up to get him, and like he's not gonna have like the top 5 hype of like a big franchise left tackle. I mean, he's gonna have the ability to like blend in, for like a better word, because he's not a top 10 pick and he's in Detroit. So he's still got the pressures to succeed, but maybe a little less. I mean, which is kind of good, especially like now that they've got like two more round 2 years of two first round picks where they could go, hey, we got our quarterback possibly, or if not, hey, we got 2 picks next year,
Right.
or the year after. It's just like you can start building and just build and build and build, and it's just like, oh wow, Detroit might be, if this is of course condition, like Detroit doing something right. I mean, it's just like a lot of teams did a lot good in the first round. I mean, I have some questions. Like honestly, I question the Steelers pick of what's his name, Najee Harris. I love the pick to them, but like, who is going to block? like you have, apparently you think Dwayne Haskins is your heir apparent to Ben, maybe.
I don't even think they think that. I think it's just a guy in there that, hopefully we'll see. Like maybe we can get him into our system, have him be behind Ben, have things maybe work themselves out. I don't know if, to me, there's a lot of similarities between Haskins and EJ Manuel for me. Just a guy that had a really, really good last season in college, was probably overdrafted, and, the character stuff came back. They should have
Yeah,
looked into that a little bit more. So, yeah, I don't think that there's super high expectations for him in Pittsburgh.
I mean, you got nothing. Worst case, you get a free first round pick quarterback.
Right.
And I mean, I would say loosely EJ, just because like just for not panning out, but like there's some clear maturity issues going on with Haskins.
Right.
Like,
I think there were some maturity issues with Manuel though. Like, I don't think he handled that whole thing right. Like, you got to come into the NFL. You have to be ready for all types of
yeah,
like roadblocks. And I feel like he's even talked about it emotionally. Like, he was a bit immature, I think, too. So I think that's why I kind of used the
well,
comparison there.
I don't think like EJ would go to a strip club without a mask on.
Well, that's just being stupid. But like, there's other things that Haskins has done,
Yeah,
in this whole thing, like locker room stuff that like, there's, just sometimes you got to do if you're going to spend a first round pick on a quarterback, you better be, you better have everybody. But it was the Gruden program that drafted him, right? Like that was
yeah,
before. So that whole thing was a tire fire going down to begin with. And, they probably weren't. Another thing too, is if you're an NFL owner, like you got to make sure that your team is properly set up to where you sign off on drafting a quarterback. Like
absolutely.
if it's like that, like it wasn't Washington, like no way am I letting you draft a quarterback and marrying me to a guy for 4 years if I'm not even 100% sure that you're going to be here next year. So that's just, but again, it's the Washington football team, and they're always a train wreck.
Yeah, or they just make things entertaining to say the nicest way possible. Yeah, it's like, I don't know if you there's a fun YouTube video you should probably watch if you haven't seen it. They did like a whole deep dive on the Manning Ryan Leaf debacle, because literally the Colts went down to almost the last few days and who they were going to take.
Mm.
Do we take the quote sure thing in Manning, or do we take this guy that's got a higher ceiling in Ryan Leaf?
Right.
And they literally like brought in like psychologists to analyze both of them. Like they were so thorough. Like, and apparently what swayed Bill Polian was the fact that Peyton Manning brought in like a 3-subject notebook full of questions.
Yeah.
But then again, it's Manning. I mean, in hindsight, are we really surprised? Like, I guarantee half the questions were not football related. Like, what's like the GDP of the city of Indianapolis, stuff like that. Seeing, do I really want to go there for the rest of my life, just to build a family around?
Right.
Because man, he played like a different IQ level than both of us. See it as like, okay, yeah, he's a good quarterback, but yeah, then all of a sudden you see him play, it's like he's calling out all this stuff himself. He's just like next level like IQ. But let's see. Who else I liked? I actually liked the Rashad Bateman pick to Baltimore. Like I mean, it seems like that's the only way they can get receivers is by drafting them.
Yeah, it's tough because I think that he's a limited player. I think that you can build around that as much as you want, and you can add a lot of things. But I think I've watched enough of him now in big moments. Like if you go back to last year, like outside of I would say like the Dolphins maybe in that Week 17 game, there weren't a lot of scenarios where an offense got completely shut down by that Bills defense. They just were without a couple guys. Like some guys were playing hurt, some guys missed a lot of time, and they completely remade over their defensive line. It wasn't the defense it was in 19. And they showed up, they had a great game plan for Lamar, but they shut him down. And like
Yeah.
I think Bateman is a fun player. I think he's like a fun idea for the Ravens, and they have no other choice but to try to get weapons around him. But they got weapons. They had weapons in that team. And I almost think like they should have gone the Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry route and just got as many tight ends. Because that's, if you go back to when the height of the Lamar Jackson story,
Mark
that
Andrews
MVP season,
and
go get him a bunch of tight ends. Because once Hayden Hurst left, I feel like it hasn't been the same. They don't have the same type of depth. Boyle was hurt last year, I think, for a big chunk. So they need tight ends.
He looks like I mean, I hate to say it, but it looks like he's been figured out. Like it was like, yeah, like you mentioned the Bills Ravens like postseason game. It was like the year before, only the Bills knew what they were doing.
Right.
I mean, it was the same game plan. It was just like it was better executed.
100%. And he didn't have the same weapons. Then they were able to zero in more on Mark Andrews. I think what made that offense so tough to deal with is that the year before was that you had to deal with 3 of the, same kind of players. And at the same time, because of where he's throwing the ball, when he's throwing to tight ends, he doesn't have to really, stretch the field or throw to the, to the outlet, to the boundary as much. And so I think that helps Lamar because he's not like going to carve up your defense with his like accuracy. Like he's got a good arm, but it's not like, that's not how he wins. That's not how even his style of play works. So
he's not gonna, he's not gonna pull a Josh Allen and throw the ball 50 yards on the back corner like he did or do like the out routes to Diggs he did.
Right. Exactly.
Or Gabe Davis for that matter.
Yeah.
to give you a postseason analysis, like the out routes he did, like when he booked out and just chucked it, like he just threw a rope down the sideline.
Seriously.
Those were amazing to say the least. I mean, I got no other draft questions off the top of my head. I mean, Marilee's in transit to dinner, I think. So she's still on, but she's muted. And
nice.
I mean, we just talked draft. I mean, like, it's over. Thank goodness. We survived.
Yeah, you don't want to hear the rev of a car for like the next 15 minutes. So
I mean, we've heard worse from our podcast, so it's okay. But I'm trying to think who else. like I kind of liked Trevor Morgan to the Raiders. I mean, like I was floored he fell that far into the second round. I thought like Jacksonville, okay, first pick, they're gonna just take him. Like everyone else was like, just turn the card in now. We'll
Yeah,
start with pick 34.
Mike Mayock, he's different, man. He's doing this thing a different way. Like, he doesn't really operate. Like I get liking Leatherwood. Like it's fine if you got a guy and you like him. I don't even mind if you have a guy slated like a little bit higher than the rest of the field. Like there's no way if he did his due diligence that he was worried that Leatherwood was going to go. Like he could have traded. I mean, just trade back to the bottom of the first. Like I don't see anybody else taking him. Like
No,
look at the run of players going there. Now at the same time, I would have never predicted Kadarius Toney going that high either. So you never know. Another guy, but I just don't think the value is there. Like if you're building your roster, like you just had, like look at what Brandon Bean has done. I mean, I'll just bring it back to the Bills because it's what I'm most familiar with. It's what I cover. He doesn't spend high draft picks like traditionally on interior offensive linemen in this run. Of course, they drafted Cody Ford, but they drafted him kind of with the idea that he was going to be a tackle, and that kind of didn't go the way they thought, so they moved him inside. You only get top set. Well, if you're the Raiders, you're probably gonna get top 17 picks every year with the way that they've been drafting. But that's not the way to use your resources. And I would guarantee you that most evaluators, the most plugged in evaluators on either side of this thing, would tell you that there is not that big of a difference. Look at the next interior offensive lineman to go, because that's where Leatherwood's being projected. He could play tackle. He played it at Alabama, but they're talking about him getting moved inside. And the next interior offensive lineman to get taken was Aaron Banks at 48. And so that's just crazy to me.
Well, you got Landon Dixon at 37, but he's more.
Oh, right. Yes, right.
But still, either way, it's a drop for 20 picks.
Exactly. So I didn't like it.
Oh, I definitely had to scratch my head on that one. And it was just like, Mike. I mean, I think it's also because in Las Vegas, I hate to say it, but I think like Mark Davis is like out to lunch, for lack of better words. It's just like it's literally Mayock and Gruden running the team.
But you'd think that would be all right. Like, what have these dudes been doing all these years? Like, I feel like wouldn't Mike Mayock just absolutely destroy that pick if he was still like working in the media side of things? Like, it's almost like you got to get in a seat and you're just like, and what I also think happened is they probably had a high grade on Leatherwood. They had to really just remake their offensive line room because a lot of guys left because they had to make room. The COVID year has impacted everybody. But that's an overreaction. Like if that's the type of pick you make when you have no belief in your ability to develop players, because take an interior offensive lineman in the third or fourth round, develop them a little bit. They had 2 picks in the third round. Who did they take at 79 and 80? They took Malcolm Kuntz, horns up, go Bulls, and Divine Diablo, which is actually a really nice pick. So that's fine. But there's probably like Wyatt Davis went at 86. Kendrick Green from Illinois went at 87. So in that range, I feel like it just makes much more sense. And even I bet you if you would go through all the way down to the 4th and 5th round, there was value there too.
Oh yeah, as much as like we mentioned Kuntz being like going back to the school we went to in UB, but I think they majorly reached for that. It's like, I mean, I did all those draft simulators myself like 100 times, and like I would get Kuntz in the 7th round,
right?
Just because he wasn't polished enough,
right?
So like you could have waited maybe a round or 2 for him, even. And it's just like, I don't know. It's like a baffling thing. It's just like, well, it's like Raiders. What are you doing? Like, are you trying to build for the future? Are you're so steadfast on Derek Carr? Like, it's like they're just like an enigma to me now. It's like, where it's like, are you getting better? Are you getting worse? I don't know.
It's a great question. And I know people in Vegas that ask the same question daily.
And it's not like they paid like $3 billion for that stadium and like hemorrhaged like the whole city's future.
Right.
I mean, God, it's just like, I can't imagine how much money. I'm surprised, honestly, as bad as it sounds. I'm surprised Mark Davis doesn't have to sell the team because of last year.
I know.
Because I mean, he's worth something like only like $700 million, and you lose that much in a brand new shiny stadium. Can't help the bottom dollar. And you took an offensive lineman, and not to knock off offensive lineman, you do need them, but like you don't have a big flashy star. Like like even if you took Etienne, or even like I'm just using it as an example just because it's a marketable name, it's like you can build around a lineman. Really?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Unless he's like I said, like he's like make it not make it. Unless he's what's his name, like Sewell, where he's like he's getting Orlando Pace comparisons, where he's like, okay, I would love. I don't think like what's his name, like yeah, hold it again. Oh yeah, I don't think Alex Leatherwood was getting Hall of Fame lineman comparisons. You can't trot this guy out. I mean, it's like watching the Dolphins in 2006 when they took John Beck and the guy Ted Ginn, I think it was, or six, or where it's like you're trying to like to trot these guys out is like you got a kick return and a lousy quarterback in your first two picks, and you're trying to market it and it just falls flat.
Indeed. Well, brother, I gotta run out of here. I gotta go get
Yeah,
ready for my show here. But thanks for having me on.
absolutely. You're welcome back anytime, Matt.
All right. Take care, Scott.
Yeah, you too, man. See ya.
Hey.
And I don't know if Marilee is still on or not, but I think she's like still driving where she's got to go. But and if you want anything else, I know you're driving, but if you want anything else, Marilee, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, we can just end the show now and just.
Yeah, still in transit, but hey, it was great that Matt was able to join us, provided a lot of good insight. It's always nice to hear other people's opinions, right? Because we talk about the draft and everybody's kind of laser focused on their team and what their team did and wanting their team to have had the best draft. Because it's such a future success. So it is always nice to hear the perspective of somebody that can kind of provide insight. And both of you were talking about what some of the other teams did, what some of the best picks were, some good surprise picks. So I think our audience got a nice rounded view of not just the Bills draft, not just the Eagles draft. Of course, that's what we represent, but a little bit around what went around the league. So it was great having Matt.
And I love keeping, and you know me, I love keeping like people, like guests, on their toes.
That's true. Yeah, you definitely did throw him a couple times, but he's very good at what he does. So you could tell that it wasn't
Matt's great. Like
too much of a concern there.
And if you want to check out his podcast, it's the Shout Podcast with him and Ryan Talbot. They both write for Syracuse.com, or I think it's New York Upstate, either way, or upstate New York. I forgot what it is, but they do a great job there. They talk a little football. They talk a little wrestling. It's more so football because they usually cover the Bills specifically, but like they both do a great job, and we'll definitely have them on again soon. And with that, I hope everyone has a good week. We probably could talk later once we do another show, probably later this week, which is entirely possible. I mean, I saw this picture for the Giants just threw a no-hitter. There's someone just threw a no-hitter. I just blanked on who it was, which is awesome TV. But like I said, Baltimore Orioles threw a no-hitter tonight, so they just literally like within the hour. So we can touch